After he saved her, the alien princess refused to leave the human side. Eli adjusted the small wrench in his hand, the cold metal pressing against his palm as he stared at the bustling spaceport. Ships of all shapes and sizes filled the sky lanes, each one gliding or hovering as though it belonged to another world. Despite the crowd, he felt a strange calm. For years, he had been fixing engines and broken equipment, navigating systems most humans wouldn't dare touch. Today, though, something in the air felt different. He noticed a group of unusual figures approaching the docking platform. Their uniforms shimmered with a faint golden light, and the shapes of their helmets were unlike anything Eli had ever seen. He squinted. At the center of the group was a figure that drew the eye without even trying. A young alien princess, her presence demanding attention. Her skin had a faint silver glow, and her eyes reflected a depth of intelligence and emotion that made Eli pause. He had heard stories of alien royals before, but seeing one in person was something else entirely. The crowd parted subtly, as if instinctively aware that she was different. Eli took a careful step closer, curious. He didn't have any official business here, but he couldn't help himself. He wanted to see her up close, to understand how someone from an entirely different world moved through the chaos of a busy human spaceport. Then, without warning, a commotion erupted. Several armed figures, he could tell by the way they moved, rushed toward the princess. They didn't belong to her entourage, and their intentions were clear from the tension in their bodies. Eli's heart beat faster. He had never faced a real fight in his life, but he could see the danger, and instinctively he wanted to help. People screamed and scattered, but Eli stayed in place, thinking fast. He noticed a supply cart nearby, heavy but movable. Without a second thought, he grabbed it and rolled it between the princess and the approaching figures, using it as a shield. The attackers paused, momentarily confused by the sudden obstacle. "Over here!" Eli shouted, catching the princess's attention. Her eyes widened at him, a mix of fear and curiosity reflecting in their glow. He motioned toward the maintenance tunnels that ran underneath the platform. "This way, quick!" The princess hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded. With a grace Eli had never seen, she followed him. His lungs burned as he sprinted toward the entrance, pulling the cart to block the path behind them. The attackers were fast, but he knew the tunnels were narrow. Their size would work in his favor. Inside the tunnel, the air was dim and smelled faintly of oil and machinery. Eli led the way, his heart racing but his mind sharp. He glanced back. The princess was keeping up surprisingly well. She didn't speak, but her eyes followed every move he made, and he sensed that she was calculating, observing, and learning as she went. Finally, they reached a side exit that opened to a quieter area of the port. Eli took a deep breath, letting some of the tension leave his body. The princess stood still for a moment, looking around, as if processing that she had survived something dangerous without harm. "Are you hurt?" Eli asked, keeping his voice low. The princess shook her head. "No." "Thanks to you, human," she said. Her voice was soft, melodic, and carried an accent he couldn't place. I owe you my safety." Eli gave a small smile, brushing a bit of sweat from his forehead. "Well, it's what anyone would do, I guess." He wasn't used to being thanked, especially not by someone like her. "But you shouldn't be here alone. It's not safe." She looked at him with a seriousness that made him pause. "I cannot return to my entourage, not yet. They would bring trouble if I am seen unguarded." She hesitated, then added, "Will you allow me to stay with you for a short time?" Eli blinked. "Stay with me? You mean on my ship?" He didn't know what compelled him, but the idea didn't seem wrong. He had lived alone for years, and the thought of having company, someone so different, someone so remarkable, was strangely comforting. She nodded, her eyes glinting with a mix of relief and determination. "Yes, for safety, and because I trust you." Eli swallowed hard. Trust. That word carried weight, especially coming from someone who wasn't human. He had always believed trust had to be earned, and somehow, in less than a few minutes, he had earned it from someone extraordinary. "All right," he said finally. "Let's get you somewhere safe." He led her back through the quieter lanes, avoiding the gaze of anyone who might recognize her. The city lights reflected off the metallic surfaces around them, casting shadows that danced like specters on the walls. Eli's mind raced with possibilities. Who were those attackers? Why had they targeted her? And why now? Once they reached his ship, a modest freighter parked in a secluded docking bay, Eli opened the ramp. It creaked slightly, a familiar sound that usually meant home. The princess stepped inside, her feet silent against the metal floor. She looked around, studying the ship's controls and the cluttered cabin with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "This is quite small," she said, her tone neutral but with a hint of wonder. "But it seems practical, efficient," Eli chuckled. "It gets the job done, nothing fancy, just enough to survive and move." He gestured to a seat near the control panel. "Sit here, you'll be safer than wandering the port." She obeyed, sitting gracefully, her posture straight and composed. Eli watched her, noticing the way she adjusted to her surroundings without a word. There was intelligence in every glance, every subtle movement. He realized quickly that this princess was not a figurehead or a pawn. She was someone who could think, adapt, and act on her own, even in a moment of danger. Hours passed as Eli prepared the ship for departure. He ran system checks, adjusted fuel levels, and mapped a course toward a nearby moon that was off the main trade routes. All the while, the princess observed quietly, occasionally asking questions about the machinery or the ship's operations. Eli explained each component in simple terms, and she listened intently, asking questions that revealed a quick mind and genuine curiosity. "You humans, you make do with so little," she said at one point, watching him tighten a loose panel. "Yet you survive, adapt, and thrive." "It is remarkable." Eli smiled, feeling a warmth he didn't often experience. "We have to out here you learn fast or you don't last." She studied him for a long moment. "And you chose to help me, a stranger. You risked yourself for someone you didn't know. Why?" Eli shrugged. "I don't know, it just felt right. Maybe it's stupid, but I can't stand seeing someone in danger if I can do something about it." He paused. "Besides, someone like you shouldn't have to face that alone." The princess tilted her head, her expression unreadable for a moment, then softened. "You are extraordinary human, perhaps more so than anyone in my world would believe. I am grateful." Eli felt a strange sense of pride mixed with disbelief. Grateful from someone like her. The words were heavy with meaning. He cleared his throat, trying to mask the nervousness creeping in. "Well, thanks. I'm not used to royal company, though. This is new." She smiled faintly, a gesture so rare that it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I will stay with you at least for a time. I am not accustomed to relying on others, but I trust you." Trust. The word echoed in Eli's mind again. It was powerful, heavier than any medal or recognition he had ever received. And it was something that could change everything. Somehow, he knew that the moment they had shared in the chaos of the spaceport had forged a bond neither of them would forget. As the ship lifted from the docking bay and glided into the night sky, Eli glanced at the princess. She stood at the viewport, watching the stars streak past. Her expression was calm, but there was a spark in her eyes, a mixture of curiosity, determination, and a willingness to see the universe through new eyes. For the first time in a long while, Eli felt that life might be more than just routine repairs and lonely space flights. Something extraordinary had begun. A human and an alien princess, brought together by chance, and perhaps something greater than chance had taken root. The journey ahead was uncertain. They didn't know what dangers awaited them, what enemies would pursue, or what trials would test their courage. But in that moment, Eli felt a quiet certainty. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And the alien princess, once so far removed from human life, had chosen to stay by his side, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. That choice, Eli realized, was far more powerful than any weapon or fleet of ships. It was trust, and it was the start of something neither of them could have predicted. As the stars stretched into streaks of light and the vastness of space opened before them, Eli tightened his grip on the controls, feeling a mix of excitement and determination. He had saved her, yes, but in doing so, he had opened a door to a journey that would test him, inspire him, and change him forever. And somewhere deep in the back of his mind, he knew that humanity's story, small, fragile, yet unyielding, was only beginning to be written among the stars. The stars streaked past Eli's ship as he guided it through the quieter lanes of space. The princess, Leora, remained at the viewport, her silver glow reflecting faintly in the metal walls. She was silent for a long time, as though she were processing everything that had happened in the last few hours. Eli glanced at her occasionally, noticing how her eyes followed every instrument, every movement of the ship. "Do you always look at the stars like this?" he asked, breaking the silence. Leora turned toward him, her eyes thoughtful. In my world, we are taught to observe everything to understand the patterns of the universe. The stars, they are more than lights. They tell stories. They warn of danger. They guide decisions. Eli nodded. We do the same in a way. Pilots, engineers, navigators, they watch for patterns, signs, anything that can help. But we don't often think about the stars themselves as wise. He smiled faintly. I like the way you see them. She returned a small smile, a rare gesture that seemed almost hesitant but genuine. Perhaps. Humans and my people are not so different after all. We both look for ways to survive and understand what surrounds us. The ship hummed steadily, but the calm was deceptive. Eli knew that the attackers from the spaceport were not likely to give up easily. He had seen enough conflicts to recognize patterns. When someone powerful was targeted, their enemies rarely quit after a single attempt. He had to be ready. Do you know why they wanted you? He asked cautiously. Leora shook her head, her expression tightening slightly. I do not fully know, but there are factions in my empire who see me as an obstacle or as leverage. I am expected to follow rules to serve their plans, but some do not want me free. They would use me to gain power. Her voice was calm, but Eli could detect the weight behind her words. He took a deep breath. Well, they'll have to get through me first. He adjusted the ship's course slightly, aiming for a moon known for its sparse population and hidden bays. We'll find somewhere safe to lay low for a while. I don't want to just run, but we need a place to think and plan. Leora watched him with interest, her eyes narrowing slightly as she considered his words. You are brave human. I would expect most of my people to hide to wait for rescue. Yet you act. Eli shrugged, trying to hide the tightness in his chest. I guess I've had to be brave before. Not with guns or fighting, but with machines, systems, situations where everything could fail. Sometimes you act because you have no choice, and sometimes because it's right. The journey was long, and during the travel, Eli explained the ship's systems to Leora. She listened intently, asking questions that demonstrated both intelligence and curiosity. She seemed fascinated by the simplicity and efficiency of human engineering, contrasting it quietly with the elaborate but rigid technology of her empire. You humans, your designs are straightforward, functional, yet effective, she commented. We spend so much time perfecting elegance that we forget practicality. You adapt, Eli grinned. Adaptability keeps us alive. We might not have fancy shields or massive fleets, but we can fix things, reroute power, make the impossible possible with whatever's at hand. Leora considered this. It is remarkable. Perhaps this is why you saved me. You see possibilities where others see impossibilities. They shared a quiet moment, watching the stars pass. For Eli, it was the first time he felt his life expanding beyond routine repairs and lonely flights. He had always known humans were resourceful, but seeing Leora's admiration made him feel the weight of what he represented, the ingenuity, courage, and resilience of his entire species. Their conversation was interrupted by a soft chime from the navigation console. Eli leaned over, scanning the sensors. We're not alone, he murmured. Leora's eyes flicked toward the readout. They have found us. Eli adjusted the course slightly, moving the ship closer to the shadow of a large asteroid cluster. Not exactly. They've picked up our signature, but we're going to use this to our advantage. Follow my lead. The asteroid field was dense, rocks tumbling slowly in microgravity. Eli maneuvered the ship with precision, weaving between massive stones. He could feel the tension building in the ship, but he stayed focused. Leora leaned forward, studying the controls with fascination. This is incredible, she whispered. You are guiding a vessel through what others would call impossible, and you are calm. I've done things like this before, Eli admitted. It's all about knowing the ship, understanding the space, and staying one step ahead of the hazards. You can't panic out here. Minutes passed as the pursuit closed in. Sensors indicated several small fighter ships, sleek and fast, moving to intercept. Eli gritted his teeth. He didn't want to fight, but he knew he might have to. He activated the ship's maneuvering thrusters, sending it spinning unexpectedly, dodging the first wave of attackers. The fighters followed, their movements precise but predictable. Eli noticed a pattern in their approach, exploiting the same angles repeatedly. Leora, he said, see those gaps between the asteroids? We'll use them, just trust me. She nodded, gripping the rail as the ship tilted sharply. Eli accelerated, sliding the ship through a narrow pass, the rock walls brushing closely past the hull. The pursuing fighters misjudged the distance and were forced to retreat or risk collision. Eli's quick thinking had created a safe window, though temporary. "Impressive," Leora said, her eyes wide with admiration. "You predict movements before they occur. You are a strategist." Eli chuckled lightly, though tension remained in his shoulders. "I do what I can." Being human isn't about having the strongest weapons. It's about using your brain, adapting, and finding ways to survive. Hours passed, and finally they reached a secluded moon, its surface dotted with craters and small caves. Eli piloted the ship toward a hidden valley, landing with careful precision. He exhaled deeply, feeling the temporary relief settle in. "This will do for now," he said, cutting the engines. "We can rest here, plan next steps, and figure out why they wanted you in the first place." Leora stepped out onto the moon's surface, her boots making soft impressions in the dust. She inhaled, as though tasting freedom for the first time in hours. This is peaceful," she said quietly. "I can think here, away from watchers and orders. I can choose." Eli watched her, noticing how her posture relaxed, how her expression softened. "Good, you deserve that. Nobody should be forced into danger or obedience without choice." They spent the evening exploring the surrounding caves, making sure there were no hidden threats. Leora asked questions about everything: the human body, the mind, the ways Eli had learned to solve problems with limited tools. He answered patiently, enjoying her curiosity and realizing how much he admired her intelligence and courage. As night fell, the twin moons of the planet rose, casting pale light across the rocky landscape. Eli and Leora sat near a small heat source he had activated, watching the sky. "You humans," Leora began slowly, "you have a capacity for hope, for courage that my people often lack. We follow rules, traditions, hierarchies. You act, you protect, you take responsibility." Eli looked at her, feeling a warmth in his chest. "I think humans have to. Out here you survive by being smart, by caring, by stepping up when others might freeze. That's the only way to make it through." She nodded, her eyes reflecting the stars above. "I see now. Perhaps this is why I trust you. Not because you are strong, not because you are important in your world, but because you are human. You embody the best of your kind." Eli felt a strange humility. He had never thought of himself as remarkable. He had fixed engines, navigated ships, and survived in space, yes, but he was just doing what anyone would do to protect themselves or someone else. Yet coming from Leora, the words carried weight. The silence between them was comfortable now, no longer tense. The danger was still out there, but for the first time in hours they could breathe. The bond between them had grown not by force, but by shared experience, by trust earned in moments of pressure and clarity. "This moon," Leora said finally, "it is a good place. Perhaps we can learn more here, about each other, about the universe." Eli nodded. "That's the plan. We rest tonight, and tomorrow we start figuring out what's really going on, why they want you, what they hope to achieve, and how we can stop it without starting a war." Leora turned to him, her eyes shining. "I will stay with you, Eli, not because I must, but because I want to. I trust you, and I wish to learn from you." Eli felt a surge of pride and responsibility. This was no small matter, an alien princess placing her trust in a human. The implications were enormous, but at this moment he didn't think about politics or wars. He thought about the choice Leora had made and the journey that awaited them. Together, they watched the twin moons rise higher, casting silver light over the rugged landscape. Eli tightened a few controls on the ship, prepared for whatever might come, but for the first time he felt a strange sense of hope. Hope that humans, no matter how small or underestimated in the vast universe, could make a difference. Hope that trust and courage could bridge worlds, and hope that, side by side, he and Leora could face whatever dangers lay ahead. In that quiet moon valley, surrounded by stars and the distant hum of their ship, a partnership had begun. A partnership that could change not only their lives, but perhaps the fate of entire worlds. And Eli, the ordinary human who had saved a princess, felt that maybe ordinary humans were capable of extraordinary things, if only they had courage, wit, and the willingness to act. The night stretched on, peaceful but filled with unspoken possibilities. And for the first time, Eli realized that this journey, unexpected, dangerous, and filled with uncertainty, was only the beginning. The next morning, the pale light of the twin moons spilled across the rugged moon valley. Eli moved through the small cabin of his ship, checking the systems, making sure everything was in order. Leora followed him closely, her eyes scanning every display, every panel. She had spent the night watching him work, absorbing every detail with a mixture of curiosity and admiration. "This ship," she began slowly, "it is simple yet efficient. You humans, you can make use of very little and achieve much." Eli smiled. "It's what we have to do to survive. Out here you can't rely on anyone else. You have to think, adapt, and keep moving. The universe doesn't wait." Leora nodded thoughtfully. "I see now why you acted so quickly yesterday. You do not wait, you act, you save lives. It is different from my world. We are trained to hesitate, to follow protocol, to calculate risk endlessly. You trust your instincts." "I guess I do," Eli said. "Instincts, experience, and sometimes just knowing what's right. You don't have to be the strongest or the fastest. You just have to make the right move at the right time." The morning passed in a quiet rhythm as they prepared for the next phase of their journey. Eli had studied star charts and communications from afar, trying to piece together why someone wanted the princess. He suspected it was not just personal ambition, but a plan that could destabilize her entire empire. "We need information," Eli said finally, breaking the silence. "We need to understand what the factions in your empire are planning and why they are after you. Once we know that, we can figure out how to stop it." Leora's eyes narrowed. "I know of factions that oppose me. Some see my role as a threat to their power. They desire control over resources, influence, and perhaps even over the throne itself. They are clever and patient, but I have never had someone act for me because of principle rather than duty. You are different." Eli shrugged. "Maybe it's because I don't care about titles or power. I care about people. If someone is in danger, I do what I can, that's all. And I guess you caught my attention. You're not just a title or a symbol, you're a person." Leora studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Perhaps that is why I trust you. Perhaps that is why I chose to stay." Eli felt warmth in his chest at her words, but he pushed it aside. They had no time for distractions, not when the threat was so close and the empire itself was at risk. They set course for a nearby moon with a known trading outpost. Eli hoped they could gather information discreetly, avoiding the attention of the factions hunting them. The journey was long and quiet, filled with shared observations, occasional laughter, and moments of deep thought. Leora asked questions about human history, engineering, and problem-solving, and Eli answered as best he could, impressed by her intelligence and quick understanding. When they reached the trading outpost, it was bustling with merchants, engineers, and travelers from multiple worlds. Eli guided the ship to a small hidden bay, keeping the vessel out of plain sight. Leora followed closely, her presence discreet but commanding, even in human company. Eli led her through the crowded lanes, keeping a careful watch. "Stay close," he whispered. "We need information, but we can't draw attention. If anyone recognizes you, things could get dangerous." She nodded, moving with grace and awareness. "I understand. We will proceed carefully." Inside a small, quiet tavern, Eli approached a group of traders who specialized in communications and intelligence. He had worked with them before and trusted their discretion. He explained, in careful terms, that he needed information about the political factions within her empire and any unusual activity that might indicate plans against the princess. The traders exchanged glances, intrigued. One leaned forward. "Information comes at a price," he said, "but it seems you have means and courage. You are not just a human tinkering with engines, are you?" Eli shook his head. "No. I am someone who wants to prevent trouble before it starts. I want to know what is happening so I can stop it safely." They spent hours talking, cross-checking rumors, and piecing together information. Leora listened quietly, occasionally asking clarifying questions. She was learning how humans approach problems, gather data, analyze it, and act decisively. Her people often relied on hierarchy and tradition, delaying action until orders arrived, but humans moved quickly and effectively. Finally, they had enough information. A faction within Leora's empire was plotting to seize control by manipulating colonies on distant planets. They intended to create a crisis, blame rival leaders, and consolidate power while the princess was away. The plan was clever, but Eli saw weaknesses in it, gaps that could be exploited with intelligence, timing, and careful strategy. "This is bigger than I thought," Leora said, her eyes reflecting concern. "They intend to destabilize the empire. Countless lives could be affected if we do not act." Eli placed a reassuring hand on the control panel. "We will act. We don't have to wait for them to make the first move. Humans may not have fleets like yours, but we have brains, courage, and flexibility. We can outthink them." She studied him, admiration shining in her eyes. "You have strategy, foresight, and moral clarity. You see the consequences of actions, and you choose wisely. I am learning from you, human." The plan they devised was cautious but bold. They would gather proof of the faction's intentions, reveal it to loyal leaders in the Empire, and prevent the manipulation before it escalated. Eli suggested using their ship's capabilities to intercept communications, hack miner systems, and gather evidence without alerting anyone to their presence. Leora contributed by offering insight into the Empire's culture and hierarchy, identifying individuals who could help them or be persuaded to act. As the sun rose over the trading moon, they prepared to put their plan into action. Eli checked systems meticulously, ensuring that sensors, communications, and navigational instruments were ready. Leora observed quietly, her confidence growing with each step. "You are meticulous," she said softly. "Your attention to detail, it is human, yes, but it is remarkable. Few would take such care in preparation. Most would act rashly." Eli smiled. "Rash action gets people hurt. Planning keeps people alive, and I don't plan just for me. I plan for those I care about, including you." She looked at him, her expression softening. "I am grateful. You protect not for reward or recognition, but because it is right. That is a lesson I will remember." The hours passed as they moved through the shadows of space, intercepting communications and gathering evidence. Each piece of data they collected brought clarity, revealing the faction's plot in detail. Eli's human ingenuity allowed them to bypass obstacles that alien intelligence considered impenetrable, using minimal resources to achieve maximum results. Leora was amazed. "You humans, you can adapt to any situation. You see possibilities where others see barriers. I underestimated your species." Eli shrugged. "We survive because we have to. We use what we have, think creatively, and trust ourselves and our allies. That's how humans make a difference." By evening, they had enough evidence to confront the situation. They set a course for a planet with loyal leaders who could act against the faction. The journey was tense but filled with a sense of purpose. Eli and Leora had developed a rhythm. He navigated and planned, she advised and observed, their strengths complementing each other perfectly. On the way, they encountered a patrol fleet sent to search for the princess. Eli's skills were tested as he maneuvered the ship through asteroid belts and debris fields, dodging sensors and avoiding detection. Leora assisted, using her knowledge of Imperial procedures to predict patrol patterns. Together, they outwitted the fleet without a single confrontation, relying on brains, timing, and precise action. When they finally arrived at the planet of loyal leaders, they presented the evidence, carefully explaining the faction's plan. Eli's calm, logical approach impressed the council, while Leora's insight and credibility added weight to their words. The leaders acted swiftly, neutralizing the threat before it could escalate. Afterward, they returned to their ship, exhausted but relieved. Leora looked at Eli with quiet admiration. "You have done something extraordinary, not with power, not with force, but with intellect, courage, and determination. You have changed the course of many lives today." Eli shook his head. "I just did what I could. Humans may be small, but we try to make a difference. And having you with me, trusting me, helped. We make a good team." She smiled faintly, her silver glow shimmering in the ship's lights. "We do. I am learning what it means to trust, to act, and to see beyond the limitations of tradition. You have taught me that." They sat together, watching the stars, their bond strengthened by shared danger, careful planning, and mutual respect. Leora's presence was no longer just that of a passenger. She was a partner, a friend, and someone who had begun to understand the value of human courage and ingenuity. Eli felt a quiet sense of pride, not in himself alone, but in what humans represented. Their creativity, their adaptability, their willingness to act on principle. These traits had allowed them to prevent a crisis, protect lives, and earn the trust of someone extraordinary. As the ship glided through the stars, the future remained uncertain. Factions still existed, challenges still waited, and the galaxy was vast and unpredictable. But for now, they had achieved something significant. They had proven that humans, even ordinary ones, could face impossible odds, outthink more powerful forces, and make a lasting impact. And Leora, the alien princess who had once been a stranger, had chosen to stay by his side, not because she had to, but because she recognized the value of courage, wisdom, and moral clarity. That choice, Eli realized, was as powerful as any weapon, as decisive as any battle. Together, they looked toward the next steps of their journey, knowing that the universe was vast. Challenges were many, but with trust, intelligence, and courage, they could face whatever came. And in that moment, Eli felt the quiet truth of what he represented, not just himself, but humanity. Small, often underestimated, yet capable of extraordinary things when they acted with intelligence, heart, and determination. The night stretched on, filled with silent stars and quiet possibilities. And Eli, the human who had saved a princess, knew that the story of their partnership, human ingenuity and alien insight, was only beginning. The capital planet of Leora's empire loomed ahead, enormous and magnificent, a swirling mix of cities, towers, and skyways that gleamed under the light of its sun. From the window of Eli's ship, the scale was breathtaking, even to someone who had seen the most impressive human-built megacities. Leora stood beside him, silent, her eyes tracing the grand design of her world. For her it was familiar yet distant, an empire she belonged to but had never truly navigated on her own terms. Eli broke the silence. "It's impressive," he said. "All that for one empire?" She nodded. "Yes. My people are capable of incredible things, but we often focus on tradition and hierarchy. The strongest towers, the most advanced technology, these are symbols. Few think about the people behind them or the consequences of power misused." Eli studied her profile. "Then that's why you've trusted me, isn't it? You see that humans can act differently. We think about consequences, about people, not just rules." She turned to him, her silver glow bright in the cabin. "Yes. You have shown me what courage, intelligence, and moral clarity can achieve. You act for what is right, not for prestige. That is unusual and valuable." Their ship descended slowly toward a discreet landing bay beneath one of the lower city layers. Eli had selected it carefully, a place where they could arrive without attracting unnecessary attention. The bay was large but mostly empty, its walls lined with maintenance corridors and storage areas. They were alone, at least for now. "Once we leave the ship," Eli said, "we need to be careful. There are factions here who will recognize me or you immediately. We have to move with discretion and gather allies." Leora adjusted her posture, her expression set with determination. "I understand. I will follow your lead, Eli. Together we will address this threat." They stepped out of the ship, the air hum of the city above them faint but constant. The corridors were dimly lit, but security drones and patrols moved predictably, following programmed paths. Eli guided them through service corridors, using his knowledge of systems and layouts to avoid detection. Leora followed silently, learning quickly, anticipating movements and adjusting her steps. "This is different," she whispered. "I have never moved through the Empire like this, never unseen. It feels liberating yet risky." Eli smiled faintly. "Risk is part of survival, and sometimes being underestimated is the best advantage you can have." After several hours of careful navigation, they reached a hidden chamber beneath the city, where a small group of loyal advisors awaited them. These were individuals Leora had trusted privately, advisors who valued justice and stability over personal gain. Their eyes widened as the princess appeared beside a human, a pairing they had never imagined. "You brought him," one of the advisors said, surprise evident. "Yes," Leora replied. "He saved me. He has proven himself worthy of trust. And together we have discovered a plot that threatens the entire empire." Eli stepped forward, presenting the evidence they had gathered, intercepted communications, documents, and detailed analysis of the faction's plan. His human logic and clear explanations impressed the advisors. He did not rely on status, intimidation, or force. He simply laid out the facts, step by step, showing what the faction intended and what could happen if their plan succeeded. The advisors listened intently, whispering among themselves. "If this is true," one said, "the faction could destabilize entire systems. Thousands of colonies would be affected." Eli nodded. "Yes, but it can be prevented. With careful planning, decisive action, and proper coordination, we can neutralize the threat without bloodshed." Leora added context, explaining the culture, protocols, and individuals involved. Her knowledge, combined with Eli's ingenuity, painted a complete picture. The advisors began to nod in agreement, impressed by the unusual alliance and the clarity of their strategy. Your species is remarkable, Leora said quietly to Eli. You solve problems that my people would delay for months, waiting for orders or permission. Eli shrugged. We have to act fast. Thinking and acting are inseparable out here, and sometimes you just have to trust your instincts. Plans were made. They would move quickly to intercept the faction's communication hubs, disable their control over the colonies, and expose their intentions publicly. Eli suggested using minimal force and clever manipulation of the Empire's systems rather than brute strength. He designed strategies that relied on timing, pattern recognition, and exploiting predictable behaviors of the faction. Leora provided guidance on Imperial protocols, helping them navigate potential political pitfalls. As they executed the plan, Eli and Leora moved through the heart of the Empire. Skyways, massive towers, and bustling streets formed a labyrinth of activity, but they navigated it with purpose and care. Leora's familiarity with the Empire allowed them to avoid detection, while Eli's creativity helped them find unconventional paths. They reached a key communications hub, hidden within a massive tower. Security was tight, but Eli studied the patterns and found weak points in the system, gaps in surveillance, predictable drone rotations, and minor flaws in the control interfaces. Leora observed, learning quickly, suggesting adjustments to the plan based on her understanding of Imperial routines. Together, they infiltrated the hub, working seamlessly. Eli disabled certain circuits and rerouted communications, while Leora accessed secure terminals, identifying files and messages that proved the faction's intentions. Their cooperation was flawless. His hands manipulated machinery while her mind interpreted cultural and political context. Hours later, they had gathered enough evidence to expose the faction. The data was sent to trusted leaders across the Empire, complete with clear instructions on how to respond. The operation was precise, leaving no trace that could endanger them or innocent parties. They exited the hub just as the first hints of dawn touched the city. Eli and Leora moved quickly back to their hidden chamber, exhausted but satisfied. Leora turned to him, her eyes reflecting relief and respect. You have done something incredible, not with force, not with power, but with intelligence and precision. You have changed the course of the Empire. Eli shook his head. I just did what I could. Humans are often underestimated, but we adapt, we survive, and we think that's what makes a difference. She studied him for a long moment. You are extraordinary. I have never met anyone like you, Eli. You make me believe that courage and intellect can reshape even the most rigid systems. Eli felt a quiet pride, not in himself alone, but in what he represented, the ingenuity, adaptability, and moral courage of humanity. He had acted not for glory or reward, but because it was right, and in doing so, he had earned the trust and admiration of someone truly remarkable. The Empire began to stabilize as the evidence spread, neutralizing the faction's plan before it could take hold. Leaders praised Leora's judgment, and her decision to act with a human ally became a topic of quiet admiration. Many began to see the value of humans not as pawns or inferiors, but as capable partners in complex situations. Eli and Leora took a moment to rest in the hidden chamber, watching the stars through a small viewport. The city below was alive but calm. The threat had been averted for now. You humans, Leora said quietly, you are small in your worlds, limited by your technology, your fleets. Yet your courage, your wisdom, your ability to act it is unmatched. I see now why I chose to stay with you. Eli smiled faintly. You didn't have to, you chose to. That says more than anything I could do. She nodded, her gaze softening. I have chosen well, I trust you, and I have learned from you. You show me a way to act with purpose, to protect, to make a difference. You are remarkable human. The night deepened, and the city's glow softened under the moonlight. For the first time since the journey began, Eli allowed himself to relax. The bond between him and Leora had strengthened, forged through trust, cooperation, and shared purpose. They had faced political intrigue, navigated complex systems, and prevented a crisis not through force, but through intelligence and courage. Eli realized that this journey was more than just a mission. It was a lesson in human potential. Humans might be small, often overlooked and underestimated, but their ingenuity, moral clarity, and willingness to act could shape destinies, even on a galactic scale. Leora placed a hand lightly on his arm, a gesture of connection and gratitude. I will stay with you, Eli. Not out of duty, not out of fear, but because I choose to, I trust you, and I wish to continue learning what it means to act with courage and wisdom. Eli felt a quiet warmth. I'm glad, and together we'll keep moving forward. The universe is big, full of challenges, but with trust, planning, and courage, we can face anything. They watched the stars in silence, a quiet understanding passing between them. The Empire was safe, for now, but the galaxy remained vast and unpredictable. Yet in that moment, they knew that their partnership had changed the course of events. Human ingenuity and alien insight, working together, could overcome obstacles that neither could face alone. And as the twin moons rose higher, casting silver light over the city below, Eli understood that this journey was far from over. Greater challenges awaited, but they had proven that courage, intelligence, and trust could achieve extraordinary results. He glanced at Leora, her presence a constant reminder that humans, though often underestimated, could shine brightly when faced with adversity. And for the first time, he felt a quiet certainty. Humanity was capable of extraordinary things, and this was only the beginning of their story. The journey back through space was quiet, but not empty. Eli sat at the controls of the ship, eyes scanning the stars and sensors, making minor adjustments to the route. Leora stood beside him, her silver glow reflecting faintly on the panels. They had successfully prevented the faction from destabilizing her empire, but the work was not complete. Some of the leaders they had alerted were loyal, but the rest of the empire still needed reassurance. We have done much, Leora said softly, but the empire, it still waits for guidance. The factions we stopped may attempt another plan. We must ensure stability for all the colonies, all the people. Eli nodded, adjusting the thrusters. Then we do it carefully. We don't need more fighting, just proof, strategy, and careful action. The universe doesn't reward rashness. She studied him, her expression a mix of admiration and resolve. You are remarkable, not only for what you do, but for how you think. Your mind is human, yes, but extraordinary. Eli felt warmth in his chest, but remained focused. I've learned a lot, too, about your people, about leadership, and about trust. You see possibilities in people where others see only rules and tradition. That's inspiring. They spent the next hours reviewing their data and refining their strategy. Eli suggested sending messages, not as threats, but as information. Clear, factual evidence that the factions' actions had been observed and would be reported. The goal was to prevent fear or chaos, to give the leaders confidence to act wisely. Leora contributed by identifying which officials would respond quickly, who could influence others, and how to present the evidence most effectively. When the ship finally approached the capital planet, Eli guided them to a discreet landing area far from public attention. From here, they would deliver the information directly to the Central Council of Leaders, bypassing the faction entirely. Leora's knowledge of the palace and government structures allowed them to move through secure corridors with minimal detection. Inside the palace, the air was calm, but tension was evident. Couriers, advisors, and officials moved with purpose, carrying messages and attending urgent matters. Eli and Leora navigated the halls carefully, their steps quiet but confident. The princess led the way, using subtle gestures and knowledge of security protocols to ensure no one suspicious intercepted them. At last, they reached the council chamber, a grand hall filled with leaders from across the empire. Eli stepped forward, holding the compiled data. He did not speak arrogantly, but clearly, presenting each detail with precision and logic. The leaders listened, leaning forward, eyes scanning the evidence and nodding as the story became clear. Leora added context, explaining the political and cultural implications of the faction's plans. Her calm authority reinforced Eli's words, making the argument compelling. Together, they showed that the faction's plan had been prevented and that the empire could now move forward safely with knowledge and preparation. One of the senior leaders, an elder with deep lines of wisdom on his face, spoke finally. You have done what few could. Not with armies, not with threats, but with strategy, intelligence, and courage. And a human, an outsider, has contributed to the safety of our empire. This is extraordinary. Eli bowed slightly. I only did what I could. Humans are often underestimated, but we adapt, we observe, and we act. That is how we survive, and sometimes that is enough to make a difference. Leora turned to him, her eyes bright. He does not exaggerate. I have witnessed his abilities, his judgment, and his courage. He is human, and that is why he is extraordinary. His actions today will be remembered. The council deliberated, reviewing the evidence and discussing the next steps. It became clear that the Empire could now move forward with confidence, having neutralized the faction's threat. Colonies that might have been manipulated were now secure, and the leaders had a renewed sense of trust in their governance. Once the council concluded, Eli and Leora left the chamber quietly, walking through the palace corridors under soft lighting. Leora looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "You have changed not only my life but the fate of this empire. I am grateful, and I have learned that humans, small as you may seem, can achieve great things with courage and wisdom." Eli smiled faintly. "I didn't do it alone. You trusted me, guided me, and shared your insight. We made a good team. That's what matters." For a moment they stood together, looking out a high balcony at the sprawling city below. Towers gleamed in the sunlight, skyways hummed with activity, and the distant moons cast shadows across the landscape. The Empire was alive, safe for now, and the immediate threat had been neutralized. Leora turned to him, her silver glow softening. "I will remain with you, Eli. Not because I must, not because the Empire requires it, but because I choose to. You have shown me the value of courage, intelligence, and trust. I wish to continue by your side to learn and to act together." Eli felt a quiet pride. "Then we move forward together. The universe is vast, full of challenges, but with trust and careful planning, we can face anything." They spent the following days coordinating with the Empire's loyal leaders, helping them implement safeguards against future attempts at manipulation. Eli's knowledge of strategy, human adaptability, and logical problem-solving proved invaluable. Leora acted as a bridge, explaining cultural norms, predicting responses, and advising on how to present the information to maintain calm and trust among officials. Their work drew attention, not through fear or force, but through demonstration of effectiveness. Other officials, previously skeptical of humans, began to recognize the value of someone who could think clearly, act decisively, and balance intellect with moral clarity. Eli, the ordinary human who had once been a mechanic and engineer, had become an example of how humanity could impact even the most rigid of empires. During quiet moments aboard the ship, Leora and Eli reflected on the journey so far. They had faced danger, navigated political intrigue, and prevented a crisis that could have had catastrophic consequences. Each step had relied not on weapons or raw power, but on observation, planning, trust, and action. "You have shown me what it means to act with clarity and courage," Leora said softly. "I have learned from you, and I will carry these lessons forward, not only for myself, but for the Empire." Eli looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. "Humans learn by doing, by facing challenges, by thinking through problems. You've seen that firsthand, and you've contributed too. Your insight, your courage, your perspective made all the difference." They shared a quiet smile. Though from different worlds, they had discovered a shared understanding. Intelligence and courage, when combined with trust and action, could overcome obstacles that brute force alone could not. As the sun set on the capital planet, casting gold and silver light across the towers and skyways, Eli and Leora prepared to leave. The immediate threat had been resolved, but the galaxy remained vast and unpredictable. They knew new challenges would arise, but they were ready together. On the ship, Leora stood at the viewport, watching the city below fade into distance. "I once believed that my role was defined by expectation and tradition," she said quietly. "Now I understand that action, courage, and trust define true leadership, and that humans can teach even an empire something remarkable." Eli adjusted the controls, feeling the hum of the ship beneath his hands. "We all learn from each other. Humans may be small in this galaxy, but we can make a difference. And with someone like you by my side, the possibilities are endless." She turned toward him, her eyes reflecting the stars ahead. "I choose to stay with you, Eli, to act together, to face whatever challenges come. Not as a princess or a human alone, but as partners, equals, and allies." Eli felt a quiet resolve. "Then we move forward together. Whatever the universe throws at us, we'll face it, not with fear, but with courage, intelligence, and trust." As the stars stretched into streaks of light and distant worlds awaited, Eli realized something profound. Humanity, often underestimated, could shape destinies, influence empires, and inspire trust and respect across worlds. He had saved a princess, yes, but he had also demonstrated the very best of what humans could be. clever, brave, moral, and adaptable. Leora stood beside him, a constant presence, her trust and admiration reinforcing his own sense of purpose. The bond between them had grown beyond circumstance. It was built on shared experience, mutual respect, and recognition of each other's strengths. They were a team, a partnership capable of facing whatever the galaxy held. The ship moved forward, leaving the capital planet behind. Stars, moons, and distant suns stretched out ahead, endless and full of possibility. Eli felt hope, not the fragile hope of wishful thinking, but the steady certainty that when humans acted with courage and intelligence, the impossible could be achieved. Leora placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. Together we will continue to act, to protect, and to make a difference. I trust you, and I choose to stay by your side. Eli smiled, a quiet pride in his chest. And I choose to continue with you, Leora. Together we will face whatever comes next. Humanity may be small in the galaxy, but we are capable of extraordinary things. And this is only the beginning. As the ship soared into the vastness of space, the human and the alien princess looked ahead, ready to embrace the unknown. The universe was vast, filled with challenges, opportunities, and wonders, but they had learned a powerful truth. Courage, intelligence, trust, and action could change the course of worlds. And so the journey continued. A human who had saved a princess, and a princess who had chosen to trust a human, set forth into the galaxy, not just to survive, but to make a difference. Together they would face the stars, proving that humanity, though often underestimated, could shine brighter than the most advanced fleets, the tallest towers, and the deepest strategies. The stars stretched endlessly, but for Eli and Leora, the path ahead was clear. Courage, wisdom, trust, and partnership would guide them. Humanity had proven its value, and the galaxy was about to learn that even the smallest among the stars could achieve greatness.